Kia ora tala namaste, haere mai, g'day, and welcome to the Niche Cast. We're from the niche-case.com, where we've got lots of Aotearoa sporting yarns for you to digest. Got the Plunket Shield basics. We have the White Ferns ODI series versus Sri Lanka. A couple of notes there. Flying Kiwis will be live on our website as well. We did have the Blackcaps. Hold that thought. But the Blackcaps, I made sure I did my Blackcaps yarn before the final because I didn't really care about the final. So there's a celebration of Blackcaps cricket, celebration of New Zealand cricket on the website as well. Got lots of rugby league stuff. Salesi Foketi made his debut for the Roosters. So that's our first Kiwi-NRL spotlight of the NRL season. We got Wellington Phoenix. I mean, you're still doing the optimistic tone. Not sure how you feel after the weekend's game, but you did do
Which team are we talking about?
the men here.
One of them's worthy of optimism. One of them, maybe a little less so at the moment.
Wellington Phoenix men, you did do like a look forward to next season. So there is that deep dive. We've got lots of football, lots of rugby league, lots of cricket on our website. So make sure you check out the website, the niche-case.com. Housekeeping, I did have a chuckle to myself where you're like, it's all about next season now for the Wellington Phoenix. You said that on the podcast, I think last week, and then you allude to the fact that you're writing about, and I was like, not sure that's going to make anyone feel better, like
It's not. It's not in the short term. No, that is true. But also maybe, well, I don't know. If it stops people from getting angry over seeing the same performance every week and another defeat, like maybe that helps. If you realize you probably don't want to be completely emotionally invested in the results of this team right now when they're clearly not going to go anywhere this season. They're clearly got no confidence, and they're clearly, uh, you know, there are ways in which you can see how they might be building towards something a little bit better next season when some of the young guys are a year more experienced. So you can get that might put someone's mind at ease out there listening to this. I don't know. I hope so, but it's certainly not going to make people feel better about what they're going to get up to this season. But I don't think that's a realistic take to have anyway. So I couldn't exactly write that article.
So you can look forward to the Wellington Phoenix next season. As also
Yeah.
noted, the Wellington Phoenix women had a good win. Auckland FC had a 1-1 draw. Lots of stuff to discuss and dissect, as we always do with Aotearoa Sport, most of which has appeared in our Monday newsletter via Substack, the nichecase.substack.com. Lots of Aotearoa sporting information is in that yarn. We got some Blackcaps notes. We got some White Ferns notes. We got some Plunket Shield notes. We have Kiwi-NRL notes. Got some Warriors notes, and also a little paragraph about Kaiapoi, Junior Bronson, Ruben, as well as lots of Wellington Phoenix. We got some Kiwis and A-League stats. We have also got a bumper dumper paid section for the paid subscribers on Substack. Big up to everyone who has a paid Substack subscription, because there's more Plunket Shield notes. Got notes on all the youngsters who scored runs this round in Plunket Shield. Got some more Georgia Plymouth information. Got lots of New Zealand Warriors, New South Wales Cup stats that I'll regurgitate here in the podcast. We've got Chris Wood pushing for Champions League, which we'll also discuss here, and plenty more Aotearoa sporting notes. So we do a newsletter every Monday and Thursday evening, half of which is completely free for anyone to have a little read of. And then we also make sure we do another half of the newsletter for the paid Substack subscribers. That's every Monday and Thursday. Thursday also features our bonus podcast, which is also sent out to the generous folks in the Patreon whānau. So you can support us through Patreon, and you get the full newsletter copied into Patreon every Monday, or it's usually Tuesday and Friday morning now. But the whole newsletter, the free section, the paid section, all of that just goes straight into Patreon. The bonus podcast goes into Patreon as well. So you can join the Patreon whānau. You can sign up to our free newsletter and also upgrade to the paid newsletter. You can hit us up on Buy Me a Coffee. You can send some big old mana waves. You can send a big old karma boost. However you're feeling, however you want to do it, however you're moving and grooving, big up yourself, because that's all we're here for, is to big up ourselves. You got to love yourself. There's your mindfulness. Whack a chang chang. You want to do some mindfulness, though? You can if you want.
Well, that was a good one to start with. And now I'll chuck up another one to follow on from that, which is from Thomas Aquinas. Shout out to the Catholics this week, apparently, who said humility is the mark of a genuine disciple.
You mentioned humility, so I have to ask, are you talking like being humbled, or I'm so humbled this amazing thing happened to me, which made me feel good, made me feel like the man, but apparently I'm humbled, so I'm feeling humble. Which humility are you talking about? Because regular listeners, and yourself would know how I feel about being humbled. For anyone new to the niche cast, if you hear someone post-match and they're so humbled by the achievement, just ask yourself, did the achievement make you feel better or worse? Because if it made you feel better, how can you feel humbled? If it made you feel worse, then it put you in your place. It humbled you. But I'm not an expert at being humble. So, well, maybe I am, because you'll sit down and be humble.
Well,
I'm sitting down being humble.
You defined it properly, so you're better off than most post-game interviews. So, yeah, I think we're going with the dictionary definition of humility here rather than the sportsman's definition. So, actual humility, where you remove your ego from the equation rather than bolstering your ego through the equation, which is sort of what you're talking about there. Is I'm so humbled to have won this trophy. It's like, you're not really. Like, you've been singled out ahead of everyone else who was eligible for it. So don't think that's quite what humility means. But actual humility makes you a genuine disciple. You know, take yourself out of the equation and I don't know, what do disciples do? Be discipling.
No, but humility is something we know very well in Aotearoa. It's part of the Aotearoa identity and all the tremendous cultures that make up Aotearoa. Some other countries, being humble is looked down upon. Being humble is a bad thing, specifically in America. So let's all just let's be humble. And on a more spiritual tip, if God humbles you, I'm so humbled by God, then you've just been put in your place by God. Like, God did something to put you in your place, to take you down a peg, to be like, oh, I need to actually let go of my ego and just relax and be humble with myself, as opposed to the opposite, as I've already ranted about. And we need to keep it moving and grooving into some basketball. Quick basketball check-in, because I do want to get you. I did have penciled in here a little cricketing intro, but I got so fired up that I just went straight into the intro, and I don't want to flip-flop between the cricketing segments. So let's just go a little bit of quick basketball. NBL finals in Australia. Don't know what's happening there, so you have to update me. But we do have NBL, New Zealand NBL starting tomorrow, Wednesday. We have, according to the NBL website, we have Hawke's Bay versus India tomorrow, Wednesday, starting at 6 p.m. And then we've got another Hawke's Bay versus India game tomorrow, starting at 7 p.m. So I don't think we've got two games. Probably just got the one game.
That might be, maybe there's Rapid League and
the old Rapid
League
one,
yeah. Perhaps.
Shout out to the Rapid League, but also just trying to get through this NBL website. It's ridiculous. Like, just show me the schedule. Where's the schedule? Okay, click through to the schedule. It's a PDF. I don't want a PDF schedule. You know, I just want the games listed in their entirety right there. Can't get it, but apparently we got Hawke's Bay versus India. Come on, Hawke's Bay, you got to do it for Aotearoa. You got to do it for Aotearoa cricket, and you got to do it for Aotearoa sport to get a win over the Indians. Australian NBL, can you update us, and can you just drop a couple gems, as you always do, about the New Zealand NBL starting this weekend? We do love the New Zealand NBL, despite my annoyance that we can't just have the basic information laid out for us there.
Yeah, I think Tribe Sports app is a little bit more in line. The NBL website does have good overall stats. You don't use apps.
This is another thing. I don't want to download your app. I'm not downloading your app. I got a couple apps, the basic apps, but I'm not downloading your apps. I don't want any more apps on my phone. I don't want to use my phone any more than I have to. So don't you or anyone else, God, don't tell me to download any apps. I don't want your apps. No more apps. I'm sorry. I'm fired up today. What can I say?
Yeah. Something about too many apps and humility and bad disciplings. I don't know. They all want you to get their app. That is true. I won't rant on this, but I could if I needed to, because the petrol station pissed me off the other day when, well, not the other day. There's like, you can't use your flybys anymore. You have to replace it with an app. Get your AirPoints app, and then the AirPoints app doesn't work anymore because you have to get the Z Station app. So I'll cut it off there and not go any further. But that was definitely a moment I experienced the other day. So, Aussie NBL finals. We got Illawarra Hawks versus Melbourne United. The two expected teams did come out on top in the end. Both needed game 3 decisive semi-finals to advance, but they did. Illawarra, as the top seed, were they had home court advantage, best of 5, so they get 3 home games. Melbourne gets 2 home games. But Melbourne pipped them in the first game. They were trailing for a lot of it, not by a lot, but they were trailing for a lot of it, and then they scored, I think, 32 points in the fourth quarter to surge back and win at 96-88. And Illawarra don't have any New Zealanders, so who cares about them? All on board with the Melbourne United train, because they have Rob Lowe getting 16 minutes in there, doing it's subtle things, but some nice stuff in there. Flynn Cameron didn't play this game. He did get he was an unused substitute, to use a different sporting parlance. They rolled with 4 fellas played off the bench, so I guess he's the 10th man in the rotation, and unfortunately that's not going to get you too many finals games. He was getting a solid sort of 6 or 7 minutes a day, a game in the semi-finals stuff, but perhaps this matchup isn't quite ideal. However, Shea Ili, 30 minutes and 32 seconds, 13 points, 3 rebounds, 4 assists, 1 block, 4 of 9 shooting from the field. He made 5 of his 6 free throws, and he was a +8 while on the court as well. So just I would say typically excellent, but actually 13 points and 4 assists is probably a little bit above his season average. So Shea Ili going to slightly higher levels in the NBL finals, as Melbourne got, I won't call it an upset, but it was definitely a big result to get a win on the road in game 1, which flips it around, because now effectively they have home court advantage because they have 2 more home games and they need 2 more wins in order to win the championship. Shea Ili has won. He won a championship with the Breakers, and he won a championship with Melbourne, I think 3 years ago, when they last triumphed. Rob Lowe, surprisingly, obviously Flynn Cameron hasn't won a championship yet because it's only his 2nd season. I was a little bit surprised to see Rob Lowe hasn't won one either. He's spent quite a few years with the Breakers. He had a little bit of a stint with Cairns. Then he went back to the Breakers. He's now with Melbourne United. He actually, he didn't align with any of Melbourne or the Breakers' previous championships. But perhaps this year is the one. You know, he's come out of retirement for this. He's come out of retirement twice, 2 seasons in a row for this. First on a short-term basis, now on a full season basis, and hopefully he's going to get I don't know if you'd say, do they give them rings in this league? I hope not. It's a very, very specifically American thing. Probably don't need to do that in the Aussie NBL, but hopefully he's going to get well, they like to clip off little bits of the net after you win finals. So hopefully he gets a little strand of hoop net to celebrate an NBL championship, because for someone who has been extremely dominant, winning a few of them in the New Zealand level, hasn't actually won one in Australia yet. And of course, Shea Ili going for his 3rd, which is great stuff. New Zealand NBL.
Whoa.
Unless you got anything to add on that.
Shea Ili might be a world champion. Rob Lowe, they might be world champions. You never know. If they win the NBL,
so. Yeah.
if they win a competition in a country, then you automatically become world champions. So hopefully
World champs of Australia.
we'll be apparently it's just world champions of the world. So that's how sports operates. New Zealand NBL, just to keep it direct and concise. What's your most exciting thing you're looking forward to? Whether it's the opening game, whether it's like a player, a squad, a group, a coach. What's one thing you're most excited looking forward to with the New Zealand NBL?
Well, I can't say the Indian Panthers because they're playing tomorrow night in the first game and they don't even have most of their team. They've only announced, I think, 2 signings. They've obviously got a bunch of other signings. They just haven't announced them. Their social media presence seems to be basically nil. And the only updates we get about them are coming from the NBL's media side of things, who obviously have a vested interest in trying to make this not look bad. But I mean, they're just an expansion team. They're not replacing anyone. If they come in and this is a little bit of a flop, well, we still have the league we had last year. You know, we've still got Hawke's Bay and Auckland and Wellington and all these Canterbury and all these other teams. So with that in mind, I think the most exciting thing for me, or at least something I'm going to be tracking fairly closely, is how the guys from last year's Under-17 World Cup, the New Zealand team that made it to the semi-finals, only New Zealand team to make the semi-finals of a FIBA tournament other than the legendary Tall Blacks of 2002. So quite a few of those guys were already playing in the New Zealand NBL last year as like 16, 17-year-olds. Now they're 17, 18-year-olds. And because of that, a couple of them have finished high school. Like Oscar Goodman was already away with the NBA Global Academy. Now he's off to college for their next season. Where are we here? Jackson Kiss, Hunter Tiratana, Jameer Reed. They've all gone not to college yet, but to like prep schools in America, getting ready to get into college after that. But there's still quite a few of these other fellas from that squad who are hanging around. You've got the Wellington Saints have got Troy Plumley, certainly a fella to keep an eye on. Nelson Giants have 3 of them. They've got Hayden Jones back again. He's going to be one of the of this crop. He's certainly one of the very best. He's already played for the Tall Blacks once. James Matthews is also there, and also Lachlan Crate has moved from Manawatu to Nelson. Ihaka Crate and Manamatin at Canterbury Rams as well. And then probably the standout fella who most recently debuted for the Tall Blacks, I think the 3rd youngest player to ever play for the Tall Blacks, is Jackson Ball, who's playing for the Hawke's Bay Hawks, will be playing for them in the season opener on Wednesday night. And he just casually dropped 29 points in one of the Blitz games last week. He's like 16 years old. And I know you got to, like, a grain of salt probably isn't even enough for what would for like Blitz performances where it's preseason and it's sort of probably a little bit closer to Rapid League than it is to what the teams are actually going to look like. And we're probably going to also get a situation where there's like the first couple of weeks of the NBL in general will take a little while for the players to filter through. Players who've been playing in Australia, like Shayeli, for example, is still playing in the finals. Flynn Cameron and Robler, I think all 3 of them are coming back to play. Obviously, they're not going to be there for a couple of weeks. And some of the guys who only just finished in the last, anyone else who made the playoffs, maybe they might need another week or 2, or they might have a break in between seasons, or players who are coming from overseas or whatever, imports as well. So this is what normally happens each season, is it might take a couple of weeks for teams to get up to their full rosters, which if that is the case for Hawke's Bay, well, Chuck Jackson Ball in there. Apparently he's still like as I say, preseason performances can't read too much into that, but still a 16-year-old scoring 29 points in a men's league like that is extremely notable, and I'm pretty excited. I think of these guys, I would say Jackson Ball at Hawke's Bay, Troy Plumley at Wellington, and Hayden Jones at Nelson. They're probably the 3 from this crew to track the closest, because I think they're the 3 of the highest chance of just doing some crazy stuff.
Relatively speaking, Steven Adams is also doing some crazy stuff because he's played more than 15 minutes in the last 3 games.
Yeah,
he did that once in the previous 6 games. So he's doing crazy shit. Shout out to Steven Adams. Back-to-back games against New Zealand Pelicans, the New Orleans Pelicans, 18 minutes, 2 wins, And in our newsletter yesterday, you had you had 3 quotes: Stephen Adams, Alperen Sengun, another big man for the Rockets, and also Coach Ime Udoka, who basically sums up what it is to be a New Zealand basketball player in the NBA. Ime Udoka says, Adams was huge as far as giving us that size with the double big lineup, rebounding, screening, all the intangibles that he does. And so just a presence in the middle. Doesn't matter what he does as far as scoring, he can impact the game in every other way. And we felt that. Shout out to Stephen Adams. Shout out to the Rockets. Still keeping an eye on you. And, of course, shout out to the Blackcaps. Blackcaps who lost the Champions Trophy final to India. As I said earlier, I made sure I did my Blackcaps ODI deep dive prior to the final because the final was not going to change my assessment of the Blackcaps. So for my personal purposes, in assessing where the Blackcaps are at, assessing Blackcaps cricket, the final wasn't going to change anything there. Partly, mainly because India are just playing at their home ground, so it's always going to be a tough challenge to beat India on their home ground in Dubai when they are playing under circumstances that no one else is enduring. So it is what it is. But of course, Kiwis were always bucking up against the international cricket forces, and that was compounded by the Matt Henry situation. I'm kind of toing and froing here because I don't know if I want to bring it up, but I think it's just important to again highlight the difference in perspective and differences in how we operate compared to how other media entities operate, because New Zealand media, it's just like, whoa, Blackcaps have lost 5 finals, whatever. Blackcaps can't win a tournament. The Blackcaps, are they chokers? Again, for me personally, what happened in the final did nothing to change my assessment of the Blackcaps. So that's that's a difference right there. I was not writing stories about what happened, what the result was for the final. But also, like, to poo-poo the Blackcaps for not winning a tournament, like, now again, this is the differences, so I'm kind of proud. I like this. I'm not angry at the media. I prefer it this way because it highlights what we do. Like, I'm just grateful. Like, the Blackcaps are awesome. They're always in the semi-finals. They make finals. They've made 3 out of the last 4 one-day tournament finals. They did win the World Test Championship. They're an undisputed, undeniable top 4 cricket team in the world. And I don't know, you're better at mathematics than me. Like, what percentage of the Indian population does New Zealand have? It might be single digits. Right? Like, New Zealand is a tiny country operating in a sport where every other test playing nation or team is bigger. So how can I be mad? Well, not how can I, because I want to set up what I'm going to say next as well. But, like, I don't know, at some point we just need to be grateful that the Blackcaps are constantly among the best teams in the world. But also, if you're going to say, like, the Blackcaps, oh, why can't they win a final? Why can't they win a championship? Well, like, did you see that India were playing at the same ground for each game? Did you follow that? Did you see that the best bowler was tearing up because he couldn't do what he is best at? Did you see that that bowler was the best bowler in the tournament for wickets? Did you see that Rachin Ravindra was the leading run scorer? Like, New Zealand is doing crazy shit in the cricketing landscape. All of which I believed before the final, all of which I believe after the final. To me, this Champions Trophy was all about New Zealand trying to crack the semi-finals because that's top 4 status. And in that semi-final, they defeated South Africa. Remember, South Africa just started the SA20 tournament, but they can't beat New Zealand. So South Africa has one of the biggest T20 tournaments in the world right now. I'd say if we're sticking with the top four, SA20 is one of the top four T20 tournaments in the world as far as quality, monies, the status, whatever you want to say. But New Zealand's better. Like if you ask anyone on the street around the world, cricket fans, to compare SA20 to Super Smash, everyone shits on the Super Smash. But New Zealand's better because New Zealand's doing something right. New Zealand cricket is actually doing something right. The Blackcaps are actually good at cricket. I believe New Zealand and the Blackcaps are third in the world. I still believe Australia's the best. Credit to India, they're second. Like they win shit. Shout out to them. Big up to them. And of course, if you're the most powerful cricketing nation in the world, you deserve some things. So it's all right. Like I'm not mad at India. They did what they did. It's all good. But New Zealand's third. Now this gets a whole lot more interesting when I meditate upon some Aotearoa vitamins. I get a whiff of the spliff, and then I start to think, wait, the Blackcaps are third. Are there any other New Zealand sports teams that are at least third best in the world? There's one other team.
The All Blacks, even the top 3 team in the world right now?
There's one other team that comes to mind, and it's the All Blacks. And sure, I think the All Blacks are better than France. I think the All Blacks are better than Ireland. But of course, that's the Aotearoa bias. So I completely forgot. South Africa is probably the best team in the world. Yeah. So again, conservatively, I will settle for the All Blacks being a top 4 rugby union nation in the world. They're not the best right now because South Africa, Ireland, and France, they will all say they're the best. You could make a case that South Africa, France, Ireland are the top 3, then it's the All Blacks. I'm going to put the All Blacks third, probably ahead of Ireland. But again, I'm from Aotearoa. I should think that way. Whoa. Are the Blackcaps and the All Blacks the same? Are they both third in the world? But all we do is kind of talk shit about the Blackcaps? Wait, are the Blackcaps doing what the All Blacks do right now? Kind of smells that way. But then again, just working through these thoughts, the All Blacks did win World Cups, consecutive World Cups, and that's something the Blackcaps have not done, so fair play. What did the Blackcaps win? They won the World Test Championship, so they do have something to win. The Blackcaps have made a bunch of World Cup semi-finals and finals. That's what the All Blacks have done. So I've kind of settled on this weird take that the Blackcaps are the All Blacks. But the way many people think about the Blackcaps is they do not put them on the same pedestal as the All Blacks, even though I kind of think it's undeniable at this point.
And another thing those 2 teams have in common, which is basically why what you're saying is the case, is because they both seem to have reputations that are based not on what they've done in the last 5 years, but on the teams they used to be 15, 20 years ago.
You are, of course, alluding to the fact that the Blackcaps weren't very good over the past couple of decades, and the All Blacks were very good. But interesting, they overlap nicely because the Blackcaps last won a World Cup in 2015. And obviously, there's a lot of nuances and variables at play here. All Blacks, they play one style of rugby. Blackcaps are playing T20, ODI, Test, whatever. And context in the global landscapes of both sports, which I actually think are fairly similar. In cricket, there's a top tier of 10, maybe 15 teams. In rugby union, there's a top tier of 10, maybe 15 teams. both sports are growing rapidly outside that top 15, which the more those sports grow, the better New Zealand's standing as third best team in the world for both teams. Shout out to the Blackcaps. The more impressive that looks. But the All Blacks won back-to-back World Cups 2011, 2015. The Blackcaps have their ODI World Cup semi-final streak. I think you said it last time on Thursday, maybe, does go back to
2007, I think.
2008, yeah. And they've made 5 consecutive ODI World Cup semi-finals. 2015 was the first time they made the final. Then they made another final in 2019. Now, again, I'm not going to go too deep into talking shit about the Blackcaps for failing to win a World Cup, given what happened in 2019. Like, the Blackcaps didn't really lose that ODI World Cup final because they made mistakes. So it was just there was just the forces of international cricket, if you peep the theme here, worked against them. Those same forces worked for them in the World Test Championship because some might say they shouldn't have even been in the final. But they did make the final. They did win the final. So there is to me, there's an overlap of the All Blacks dipping out of an undisputed top rugby team in the world, their dynastic period. They built up this pedigree. As you were saying, their reputation was as one of the best, if not the best sports team in the whole world. They're not that anymore. Of course, I hope they get there. Again, I want to see the All Blacks be the best team in the world. But they're not there right now. At the very least, they are in the mix with South Africa, France, and Ireland to be that big dog in rugby union. In that time period, the Blackcaps made, I'm pretty sure, no, the Blackcaps final would have been before that 2015 Rugby World Cup final. This is a bit of a tangent, but we're getting there. Since then, the Blackcaps have made finals. They've won the World Test Championship. They made a T20 World Cup final. They made 3 T20 World Cup semi-finals, which I'm not sure off the top of my head what year they were. But in the period since 2015, the Blackcaps have made one-day tournament finals. They've won a World Test Championship. They've made a T20 World Cup final. They've made T20 World Cup semi-finals. And they're generally a top 4 team across all 3 formats. So I believe the Blackcaps have moved up into that consistent, solidified top 4 spot, establishing themselves at number 3. And the All Blacks have dropped down to the top 4 spot, again, establishing themselves, to my mind, at number 3. I'm not we can get into bigger picture stuff and all this other stuff, but that is just an interesting thought exercise to do. Because there's to me, it's half and half. There's half the people who are grateful for every time the Blackcaps achieve something that is very impressive in making a semi-final, making a final. There's another half that seems to despise the Blackcaps. I don't even think it's a half, to be honest. I think it's like 10%, 20%, a quarter, whatever you want to say. That group, they despise the Blackcaps because they can't win. But I think the listeners know where we stand on it. And again, it's a very interesting thought exercise right now in 2025 that the Blackcaps and the All Blacks are in the same situation, the same standing of their respective sports. But again, this is the niche case, so we do what we want to do. We talk about it how we want to talk about it. But you look at around other places, the Blackcaps are not talked about in the same way the All Blacks are talked about. They're not put on that pedestal that the All Blacks exist on, even though they're doing the same shit right now. So that's just how I feel. I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
so uh,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
hit me, hit me.
how many tournaments are there in international cricket? It's you got the Test Championship, you got the ODI World Cup, you got the T20 World Cup. We've now apparently got the Champions Trophy back again. Am I missing anything? Is there another one?
Well, I get what you're saying, but I mean, I just want to make the boundaries. I want to create the boundaries to include sweeping India and India, like some of those things that
Yeah, I
aren't in
know. That's
tournaments.
fine.
But it's like, oh, how can we fit this in to suit the argument? That's all I'm doing is trying to find facts to suit the argument. But I did think like rugby's got the World Cups, so then you have to go through what's it called, the Pacific Champion? No, that's league, like the
Um, what used to be the Tri Series is now the Rugby Championship.
Rugby Championship. That's the one. So you include that, which, to the best of my knowledge, South Africa dominates. So
Probably.
sorry
Yeah.
for hijacking your point there. I'm not sure what you're trying to say, but I did hijack it. So continue.
Yeah, no, well, I was just saying there's four major tournaments in international cricket, and in the last decade, the Black Caps have made the finals of all of them. They've won one of them. They've made finals. If you include 2015 as like, the inclusive, the, you might argue that's we're at the start of 2025, so that still counts within 10 years. I'm counting it. That means two ODI World Cup finals in that time, and as you say, semi-finals across the board, and most of these other ones as well is kind of a crazy record. And yeah, I don't know, I got frustrated with that idea as well. Just got frustrated when I was seeing it put out there by like overseas media stuff, but then when I saw it also being hampered on by New Zealand media even more so, it's like this idea that the Black Caps, they can get to the final but they can't win them. It's like, well, let's break down the finals they've been into, like, in the street, because they won they won what is they won the Champions Trophy 25 years ago, beating India. It was like their first major one. Whatever, that's a different era. We're not talking about that one. 2009 Champions Trophy, thrashed by Australia in the final. Shane Watson scores an unbeaten hundreds. Like, that's fair enough. There's a Australian team that had Brett Lee, Ricky Ponting, Mitchell Johnson, Shane Watson, obviously scoring all the runs there. That's not a game in which the Black Caps went into with anyone expecting them to be able to win. They were big underdogs there. 2015 World Cup final, lost to Australia by 7 wickets in Australia. A really good Australian team again. Like, they thrashed
You
us in
know,
the final. It was pretty bad, but like,
do you know what I
that's
was thinking
not.
about that 2015 World Cup? New Zealand played all their games in New Zealand, then played the final in Australia.
I was thinking about that too, about the Dubai Pakistan switch here, except that we did play India and Dubai in the group stage as well. So we'd at least had one test there. But and it was under very different circumstances because it was a co-hosting situation rather than a political situation. But there is something in that as well. It's like you got to go to a different place for the final, and that definitely caught the Black Caps off guard. It also caught them off guard just playing against Australia away in such a big game. But they clearly learned from that, because the next time they made a World Cup final, they were awesome and didn't lose to England in 2019, to England in England, like second time in a row they played the hosts, effectively played the hosts in this one as well, even though it wasn't actually. Uh, like they, yeah, that's not a defeat. That's not a Black Caps didn't turn up in the big moment. They played fantastic. That's like one of the best games of cricket that's ever been played, and they picked a random technicality to split the two teams. Like, they tied after the super over. So I don't think you can blame them for losing that, because I don't think they did lose that. 2021 World Cup final, lost to Australia by 8 wickets in Dubai, the T20 World Cup final. That's, yeah, okay. They lost to Australia again. They put up a competitive total, didn't have the bowlers to restrict Australia. Mitchell Marsh went nuts from memory. I think David Warner got 50 as well. And then this time lose to India in Dubai, but what was effectively in India because it's close to India, and all their plans just flew out and packed out the stadium, and it was pretty much an Indian home ground, and they've been playing there the whole time, blah, blah. Like, none of those instances were the Black Caps expected to win or favored to win. Every single one of them, they're actually quite significant underdogs, because they're almost always playing either against like a generationally good Australian team, or they're playing against the host of the tournament, or they're playing against a generationally good Australian team who are also the hosts of the tournament. Like it's not a fair thing to attack the Blackcaps for when they've done such a good job in getting there in the first place. And even when one of them, I was reading the criticism extended to Kane Williamson. Well, Kane Williamson didn't like he hasn't got more than 30 in the 3 ODI finals that he's played in the 2 World Cup finals or this one. It's like, well, I do also recall the T20 World Cup final against Australia when he scored 80 odd at a strike rate of like 170, and it might be the best T20 knock I've ever seen. Like it was unreal against an extremely good Australian bowling attack under a lot of pressure, and he's just whipping boundaries off his hips all over. Like he was amazing in that one. So I don't think that's even fair to say, well, Kane Williamson didn't get scores in any of the 3 ODI ones. Yeah, but the T20 one, he was incredible. And let's not forget the Test Championship final as well, where he also was there unbeaten on 50 odd in the run chase at the end. Like maybe he didn't deliver in the 3 ODI ones, but he was extremely good and absolutely essential to the Blackcaps efforts in the T20 final that they made and in the Test final that they made. So even that doesn't seem like a fair brush to be tarring him with. I think people are just maybe reaching a little bit too much for reasons to feel disappointed when actually this was a really good performance from the Blackcaps, who hadn't even been that good of a ODI team lately. They haven't played enough ODIs, basically. I guess they haven't been that good of a white ball team over since the previous World Cup. They had a disappointing T20 World Cup. They had a couple of disappointing series where they just weren't on the same level as we expected from them. But here they absolutely were. They fielded out 1 or 2 drop catches. The Kyle Jamieson drop in the final wasn't great. But up until then, they were taking incredible catches throughout. Really effective, efficient, like good captaincy. Mitchell Satner's clearly rejuvenated this team. They're getting scored more hundreds than any other team at this tournament. Top run scorer, top wicket taker. I do feel like they would have had a chance of defending that total if Matt Henry was playing, though. I think they so clearly just needed early wickets to put a bit of pressure on, like the last time they played against India and Dubai in the group stage when they had them 3 for 30 on and Matt Henry took 2 of those wickets. Without him, Nathan Smith comes in, gets smashed, only bowls 2 overs and a wicket that clearly was so much more in favour of the spinners, which is what happened when we batted too. Is we smashed their seamers, but we couldn't hit their spinners. But their spinners were just a bit better than our spinners, and that made the difference in the game. Like the better team won. There's no arguing that. But I think it was so clearly a promising outing from the Blackcaps across the whole tournament. I don't see why people would need to reach for reasons to be disappointed when, especially the way that team is built, that's the ODI side for the next 5 years, relatively. So, like, you only need to look at Rachin Ravindra to see that for all the encouragement that you need. Like he was that 6 he hit early on off I think Mohammad Shami, where he like whips it off his hip and hits it in front of mid wicket. It just clubs it. It was such a such a beautiful moment to see, like such a beautiful shot, like just perfect timing, and he smacks the ball hard, and he's out there doing this in these big games consistently. Why do people need to find reasons to be upset about the Blackcaps when you can watch that for the next decade,
Because they don't know that Rachin Ravindra is better than most batters who have come before them. I mean, if you want to do it, we can do it, but he's probably got better ODI stats right now than Kane Williamson. Like this is New Zealand cricket where these new players are exceptional, but people don't want to believe it, which hold that thought, because Blackcaps have been a very good ODI team. The only blip was the tour of Sri Lanka where they took a development team. So they had the 2023 World Cup. What happened there? Made a semi-final, no worries. Then they had the T20 World Cup where they sucked with a lot of senior players. Then they didn't play ODI cricket for that year until they went to Sri Lanka, and they've been excellent since then. They beat Sri Lanka and New Zealand. They won the tri-series against South Africa and Pakistan. Far bigger nations, far more cricketing resources as far as players go, and money probably goes. We wiped them aside. We wiped aside Pakistan on their turf multiple times, and we beat South Africa 2 games in a row, one of which was a semi-final. So that's Blackcaps ODI cricket. I mean, Kyle Jamieson drops a catch. Nathan Smith, not his best performance because they were tired. Lots of flying, lots of travel. This is what happens in the tournament. Like, okay, these guys are tired. It's all right. Severe disadvantage as far as the travel goes, but it's all good. But
It's also a reflection of the high standards the Blackcaps had as well, where it's like one dropped catch becomes a thing where it's, wow, I've only taken that one. It's like everyone drops catches. Every team's dropping catches throughout the tournament. Just the Blackcaps were so good at taking theirs that the fact that any catch would not go to hand becomes a talking point. Whereas I was watching like the end of that Blackcaps innings where I think Bracewell like whips one towards third man or something, and Ravi Jadeja sticks out a foot and it bounces off his foot. I mean, he could have bent over and picked it up without even diving. It's like no one's complaining about that. Like no one's complaining about the bad standards there. Even Simon Dulu often does. Well, the commentary was just like, unlucky, mate. You didn't quite get there with your foot. Like that's actually bad fielding. But the Blackcaps have such high standards with their fielding and were so good throughout this tournament that like one tough catch rushing in on the boundary, reaching down, can't quite hold on to it, becomes like a spotlight moment.
the spotlight moment for me, though, is that the Blackcaps and White Ferns are progressing very nicely with new players. So the Blackcaps, again, they made a Champions Trophy final with no Tim Southee, no Trent Boult. But the same people who complain about them not winning are the people who put Trent Boult and Tim Southee on a pedestal as the best players ever, the golden generation. Well, the Blackcaps just maintained their high standards without them. The Blackcaps won a test series in India with no Trent Boult, no Kane Williamson. That's happened in the last 6 months. So you can't be angry or disappointed about the future of Blackcaps cricket when they are performing at the same high level without legendary Kiwi cricketers. Now, the White Ferns, they just had an ODI series win against Sri Lanka without Sophie Devine, without Amelia Kerr, without Leah Tahuhu, without Haley Jensen, without Molly Penfold, without Lauren Down, without Bella James. And the White Ferns, to be honest, they look better than they've looked in the last 12 months. Which leads us into a period of cricket which is going to be extraordinary. We have a T20 this Friday night between the White Ferns and Sri Lanka. That's a standalone fixture in Christchurch. Sunday in Christchurch, we have White Ferns versus Sri Lanka in a T20 international. Immediately followed by Blackcaps versus Pakistan, T20 international. The Blackcaps will play 5 T20s against Pakistan. The first 2 will feature the White Ferns and Sri Lanka. The next 3 will feature the White Ferns versus Australia. So we're going to have 5 game days where 5 double headers, 5 double bangers. White Ferns versus Sri Lanka to finish their T20 series. White Ferns versus Australia in 3 T20s. Blackcaps versus Pakistan in 3. Sorry, talking my throat into crazy business. Blackcaps versus Pakistan in 3 T20s. Then Blackcaps complete their summer with 3 ODIs versus Pakistan. All of which will be put up against NRL, A-League, and Super Rugby. When Auckland FC, the old A-League website shit the bed again. It's doing me crazy. When are Auckland FC playing again? Can you?
I can tell you that they play again. I can't even find the thing.
Sunday, March 16th at Mount Smart Stadium. So the Warriors are
Yes.
playing Manly Sea Eagles on Friday night at Mount Smart Stadium. The Sunday, Auckland FC are playing at Mount Smart Stadium. That is epic in itself. But at the same time, we have White Ferns Blackcaps double headers happening. And if you are a Wellington Phoenix fan, you're going to have Phoenix footy on. You're going to have Kiwi-NBL basketball happening. Fair play to basketball. I mean, those little arenas will probably be jam-packed because Kiwis love basketball. Kiwis show up for basketball throughout the regions. But, I mean, all we've been hearing about is how awesome Super Rugby Pacific is. Best season ever. I've literally heard rugby union pundits say that Super Rugby Pacific is the best rugby competition in the world. And at the same time, other rugby people have been saying the Six Nations is the best rugby competition in the world. I don't know. One's international, one's franchise footy, so that kind of tells you all you need to know. But the New Zealand rugby and Australian rugby people, they're saying this is the best season of Super Rugby Pacific ever. It's going to be washed aside by cricket, it's going to be washed aside by rugby league, and it's going to be washed aside by football. Because all three of those sports over the next few weeks are going to get bigger crowds than Super Rugby. So this is it's fun for starters, entertaining, fascinating, crazy period of Kiwi sport coming up. And to bring it back into the cricket discussion, like we've got some fun White Fern stuff happening, but as you said, well, not as you said, like you said, this is the Blackcaps ODI team for the next few years. We're going to see a pretty different Blackcaps team, I reckon, for these next few weeks compared to what was in the Champions Trophy. Because I think they're going to want to rest a few players.
IPL as well.
IPL's happening. So you like Bevan Jacobs. Got to mention Bevan Jacobs because if you've been under a rock and you don't know about the underground king, Tom Bruce, then you also might not know about the biggest storyline in New Zealand cricket of the youngsters being exceptional batters. Because Bevan Jacobs, T20 extraordinaire, the youngster who got an IPL contract out of nowhere, he is now third for Plunket Shield runs. 9 innings, 1 century, 3 50s with a strike rate of 57. He's not a T20 slugger. He's not a T20 whacker. He is a pure class batter who could be playing in these Blackcaps series, but no, he's got an IPL contract because that's just how it is. And it's all good because someone else will get an opportunity. But Bevan Jacobs not even as good as Reece Mariu, who's averaging 110 in the Plunket Shield this summer. Even better, he's 23 years old, 23 innings of first-class batting, and he's averaging 67.6 with a double century, 3 50s, and 7 50s. This dude has 11 50-plus scores in 23 innings as a 23-year-old. But he's not going to be playing for the Blackcaps in the ODIs and T20s, though. But we will see new players. We will see fresh players. But you're going to have your Nathan Smiths, maybe your Kyle Jamisons, your Jacob Duffys, your Mark Chapmans, the guys who weren't consistent first 11 players in the Champions Trophy. I think they're going to line up against Pakistan. The squad will probably be announced soon. So you might be able to see that squad and pick apart what we're saying. But senior players being rested, IPL duty, that will create a situation where you're going to have fresh and funky Blackcap squads. You're going to have your Zach Folks. You're going to have your Mitch Hay. You might even have a Matt Boyle. Who knows? You might have Eddie Ashok. You might have a Josh Clarkson who just banged the big century for CD in the Plunket Shield. There are going to be a lot of young, vibrant Kiwi cricketers playing for the Blackcaps over the next few weeks against Pakistan, starting with the T20s. And one of the best isn't even going to be there. So then there's more opportunities for the youngsters. So not like, again, what are the crowds going to be? Bumper dumper, jam-packed. Because Kiwis, unlike other cricketing nations, Kiwis show up to watch any format against any opposition anywhere in New Zealand. ODI versus Sri Lanka and Nelson, jam-packed. Then you factor in the double banger situation, where Kiwis can watch the White Ferns and the Blackcaps. This is going to be really, really fun. And it's coming after a really fun Champions Trophy campaign. So I'm excited to see what happens over the next few weeks with the Blackcaps. Now, again, you go towards younger players, you test out your depth, results are going to be a bit iffy. I don't know about Pakistan. I don't know what kind of squad they're sending over. But that only amplifies the intrigue for the Blackcaps. Because there's a lot of really good young cricketers right now who are playing at a very high level in New Zealand. But there's also, I mean, who's to say Tom Bruce shouldn't be in the Blackcaps? He might be there. Brett Hampton. He might be there. You never know. These dudes are awesome. And they're playing at a high level in Aotearoa, in domestic cricket. And opportunities will present themselves over the next few weeks. Before I go into the White Ferns, do you have like any kind of thoughts about that Blackcap situation, the double banger situation, the excitement for Kiwi cricket, especially when packaged against these other sports? You can say whatever you want because that's what you always do.
That's how podcasting works, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. I don't need to echo what you're saying. Like, that is going to be good fun, and it doesn't really matter if they don't have their full strength team or whatever, because they're also fun when they bring in other guys, and bringing in other guys has led to players like Will O'Rourke, Nathan Smith working their way into the Champions Trophy squad. And there will be another ODI World Cup, I would assume, in 2 years, probably 2027, I'd imagine. So they've got the core of a really good team building into that. And I do almost feel like I said, like they've set up a team that can take them for 5 years, longer in terms of guys like Ravindra. I almost hit like, I don't know, I almost regret saying that because at the same time, I'm like, yeah, but that's the starting line. Like that's not to say that they're going to keep these guys for the thing. That's the starting point. There's absolutely no doubt whatsoever that other fellas will push through and overtake a few fellas between now and then, because that's what's happened with those fellas, like with O'Rourke, with Smith, whoever else. Fellas, we've been talking, I just said fellas like 4 times, but they're good fellas. So I just to reiterate what you're saying is that it is going to be a lot of fun, and it is going to be a nice because it's the end of the home summer, isn't it? So it's a nice cap on the summer where both the White Ferns and the Blackcaps have had really successful seasons. Like the Blackcaps, there was a little bit of a dip when the tour to Sri Lanka that sort of started the span wasn't very good. Home against England struggled at the start, but more than balanced out by beating India, sweeping India in India, and then a good Champions Trophy performance and good ODI series around that. And the White Ferns won the T20 World Cup, so don't have to worry about them in finals. Apparently, they won the T20 World Cup, and this one of the games got rained off against Sri Lanka, but those 2 ODI victories that they had were awesome. And you can say like, yeah, it's only Sri Lanka at home, they should be winning these. Yes, but the way in which they won them was great, because they just seem like a cheerful, vibrant, confident team, which they haven't done for a long time. And also the fact that they won them at all, because there was, they've lost to They've lost a series at home to Pakistan within the last few years. They've lost to Sri Lanka overseas, so they're clearly a dangerous team. Like you got to be on the ball to beat a team like that, and they were. They played like confident, efficient cricket, and different players like the Blackcaps of the Champions Trophy, different players stepped up with leading performances in each game, and it's the kind of just fun, vibrant, successful White Ferns tour that we had series that we haven't necessarily had a lot of in recent times. So that feels like a bit of a celebration in itself as well. So it was good, happy things. I guess I've kind of transitioned you into the White Ferns on that.
You have, but I forgot to mention, like the Blackcaps made the Champions Trophy final, not just without Bolt, not just without Southey, but also no Lockie Ferguson, no Adam Milne, no Finn Allen, no Tim Seifert, no Jimmy Neesham, no Ish Sodhi, no Henry Nichols, which is 9 players.
Devin Conway on the bench.
He was there. That's 9 players listed. If we want to build out a first 11, we can chuck in Cole McConchie, he's played international cricket, Blair Tickner, Ben Lister. That's if you want to build out the first 11. But if you say the Blackcaps went all right without Bolt, Southey, Nichols, Neesham, Sodhi, Ferguson, Milne, Seifert, Allen, happy days. No complaints. We're rocking and rolling, moving and grooving. The White Ferns. This, as you said, really fun series. Fresh, vibrant, invigorating. There were 7 out of the 8 batters scored 40-plus runs. And every bowler who bowled took a wicket. If we're looking at White Ferns over the recent years, their biggest issue was that no one else stood up. Well, now, again, the players missing, no Devine, no Kerr, no Jensen, no Lauren Down, no Molly Penfold, Bella James. None of them are there. And the White Ferns do what they have struggled to do over the past few years in getting important contributions everywhere, batting-wise. Centuries for Plymmer, coming back from injury. Maddie Green, stepping up as a leader. Susie Bates got a 50. Polly Ingalls down the order, 2 innings, 43 runs, strike rate of 165. Jess Kerr, Brooke Halliday, Izzy Gaze, they all scored runs in the middle and lower order to make sure the White Ferns went deep into the 200s. Again, every bowler who bowled took a wicket. 4 of them took 4 wickets. Hannah Rowe and Jess Kerr, who bounced back from not being selected against Australia. Ree Illing, 4 wickets. Debut series, bowled the most overs as a lefty. Eden Carson, 4 wickets. After being the best bowler in the Super Smash and HBJ Shield. Bat and ball, we now have a White Ferns team that just won a series 2-0 without half of a first 11. And they did so with nearly everyone contributing. I'm going to say everyone, because the one player who didn't score runs was Emma McLeod. She's 18 years old, and she actually contributed. Because she was energetic. She was vibrant. She was enthusiastic. She was excellent in the field. So she had 2 innings. She scored 10 runs. She had a strike rate of 36. It was a tough introduction to international batting for Emma McLeod. But when I'm watching the White Ferns field, they all look like Emma McLeod. They all look like they're having fun, like Emma McLeod. They're all diving, ripping around the field, whipping their throws in, like Emma McLeod. So the one player who didn't score runs contributed to a really strong series to the White Ferns. And she actually contributed in the same way That was the most important observation about the White Ferns, where they were fun to watch. They were fun to watch, and they looked like they were having fun. You know, there's different skills on show. Now we've got a lefty. We've got Polly Ingles smacking boundaries down the order, but she's also an excellent wicketkeeper. She's like an excellent wicketkeeper who, she doesn't sledge. She doesn't chirp. She has conversations behind the stumps. That is fun to watch. White Ferns, I mean, players from around Aotearoa might not like this. Cricketing fans from around Aotearoa might not like this. But Susie Bates as captain and a fresh, vibrant White Ferns team looks and feels like the Otago Sparks. And the Otago Sparks are one of the best and most fun cricket teams in New Zealand cricket, men or women. They are the dominant HBJ Shield team. They are a competitive Super Smash team. So that's, I don't know, like, Susie Bates leading a young group of cricketers. Sounds like the Otago Sparks, and they're not the worst team to be looking like, to be feeling like. Even Fran Jonas, right? So Fran Jonas, she only played the third game. She came in for Hannah Rowe. It's kind of funny how the way Eden Carson spins the ball a little bit, Susie Bates spins the ball a little bit. They don't really spin the ball. Fran Jonas doesn't spin the ball. So, like, I'm not going to say these are spinners. I'm leaning towards funky slow bowlers, which is actually good considering they have Brooke Halliday as well. So then you've just got a variety of funky slow bowlers. Eden Carson spins the ball the most. Susie Bates is probably next. Then you go Fran Jonas. But Fran Jonas didn't play the first two games, comes in for the third game as someone who wasn't selected for the ODI. She was only selected for the T20 internationals, but she was a late replacement for someone. I can't remember off the top of my head. And she takes 3 wickets in her one game, her one opportunity. So even she did her job. This is a White Ferns team that just had a 2-0 series win over Sri Lanka in their weaker format. I think they were 9-12 in the Women's Championship. I think they're 4-9 in ODIs since the start of last year. So they're not a good ODI team, but they won the series without their best players. Heading into a T20 period with the double banger situation in their best format against Sri Lanka and Australia. So they have amplified the excitement. They may have made this more fun, more interesting, more intriguing. They've done their job. They've played their part in a very exciting period for New Zealand cricket. Things will keep getting exciting because we just had some squads announced, and we do have an all-white squad apparently on its way during our recording. So we'll touch on that later, but we have a Blackcaps T20 international squad and White Ferns squad updates. Izzy Gaze suffered an injury in the third ODI versus Sri Lanka. So she is out, and Hayley Jensen, Bella James, they're still out injured after missing the ODI series. So Polly Ingles, Bella James stay with the White Ferns for the T20s, having only been selected for the ODIs. And Flora Devonshire comes into the squad for the T20s. Very impressive youngster out of Central Districts. Bowls lefty finger spin, and she is a lefty batter as well. Sneaky, powerful hitter who has scored plenty of runs, taken lots of wickets in domestic cricket. So again, that follows into the theme of White Ferns selecting youngsters who have actually scored runs, taken wickets in domestic cricket. And suddenly, the White Ferns have a lefty seamer and a lefty spinner, and they may have a team with 2 lefty batters in it. So we've gone from having no lefties to Brooke Halliday being a lefty batter. Now we're adding Bree Illing and Flora Devonshire into the White Ferns T20 squad to play Sri Lanka. Then we've got a Blackcaps T20 squad. Michael Bracewell, Finn Allen, Mark Chapman, Jacob Duffy, Zach Folks, Mitch Hay, Matt Henry, Kyle Jamieson, Daryl Mitchell, Jimmy Neesham, Willa Rourke, Tim Robinson, Ben Sears, Tim Seifer, Ish Sodhi. So we got Chapman and Duffy, who were in the Champions Trophy squad but didn't play. There are youngsters, Zach Folks, Mitch Hay, and Tim Robinson. Tim Robinson's had a good summer. I like what Tim Robinson is doing. And then we got that group of like established Blackcaps who dipped out of the top tier recently, but now they're back in the mix. Finn Allen, Jimmy Neesham, Tim Seifert, and Ish Sodhi. Of course, Ben Sears missed the Champions Trophy due to injury. Like, these dudes, like Finn Allen, no contract, T20 circuit player, still wants to play for New Zealand. Jimmy Neesham still wants to play for New Zealand. Tim Seifert still wants to play for New Zealand. And that was an interesting observation going back to the Ford Trophy final. Finn Allen, Jimmy Neesham, no contract. They don't have to play, but they're showing up for Auckland. Tim Seifert, no contract, T20 circuit player, doesn't have to play, wants to play for Northern Districts. These dudes want to be involved in New Zealand cricket at all levels. And so that is it's a pretty fun squad. We got Willow Rourke and Kyle Jamieson for the first 3 games. Then Zach Folks and Matt Henry come in for the last 2 games of the T20 series. And, who's playing a lot of cricket here? Michael Bracewell, Matt Henry, but he gets a little rest. Daryl Mitchell, he's still there. Willow Rourke, but he's getting a little rest. So the main dudes who are playing a lot of cricket right now, Daryl Mitchell and Michael Bracewell. How many dudes from the Champions Trophy squad do we have here? 1, Bracewell. Well, let's go first. Chapman and Duffy didn't play. So we got Henry and Mitchell, Willow Rourke. So 1, 2, 3, 4. That is Aotearoa cricketing depth on display there. There's not a whole lot of crossover with the Champions Trophy first 11. Guys who didn't play at the Champions Trophy are now selected. Woo-wee. Stays exciting. You can fire off some thoughts, but we'll be here for 5 hours doing the podcast. So say what you want, but we got to keep it moving.
Yeah, we might be better off to keep it moving. The only thing I'd say is maybe that's a little bit of a reward for guys like Seifert and Neesham, who have shown a commitment to Kiwi cricket by playing in the domestic stuff, and now find themselves in a squad like this. Is maybe a little handshake, a little pat on the back, saying good on you, sticking around. You didn't have to. We'll give you some games here as well.
We can't move off the cricket, though, because I still want to highlight Tom Bruce, the underground king. Of course, Tom Bruce, big old 300 at Eden Park's Outer Oval. There is a theme of big scores at Eden Park's Outer Oval. I think Mark Chapman hit a double century there earlier in the season. I wrote this in the newsletter, so it's right here. Reese Madiu hit 185 earlier in the season. Sean Sollier's got 170 earlier in the season. Tom Bruce scored 345 runs in a game when Dane Cleaver scored 115, Josh Clarkson 166 not out, Bevan Jacobs 157 runs. So you can score big runs at Eden Park, Outer Oval, but it's also important to note that there's guys who have scored a lot of runs, but in each of those innings, there's guys who didn't score a lot of runs. So it's not like you can just show up and score 200. The dudes who are scoring runs in these games are the best batters, like Mark Chapman, 200, Tom Bruce, 300, Sean Solier, Nick Kelly, Reese Mariu, Henry Nichols, Clarkson, Cleaver, Bevan Jacobs. Still need to be a good batter to score the runs. But Tom Bruce, official underground king, I'm saying it with my full chest out. The last dude I can think I gave that Underground King label to was Matt Henry before he really climbed into all three formats for the Blackcaps and became a legend. But Tom Bruce, big runs. He's won a championship in each competition. But interestingly as well, Tom Bruce, first class debut, 54 runs. List A debut, 88 runs, a strike rate of 135. T20 debut, 82 runs, a strike rate of 161. He scored a 50-plus score on debut in each format for Central Districts. Last 4 seasons of first-class batting for Tom Bruce. 858 runs at an average of 143. 887 runs at an average of 63. 399 runs at an average of 50. 424 runs at an average of 70.6. Tom Bruce doing amazing things, but again, you can't let that overshadow the youngsters are also doing great things. Here's all the youngsters who scored runs in the Plunket Shield this round, which does not include Muhammad Abbas and Curtis Heafy, 2 of my elite young batters in Aotearoa. Reece Mariu, 23 years old, had a knock of 65 runs versus Northern Districts. Bevan Jacobs, as I said, 157, but he also hit 32 not out. Tim Robinson, 40 runs, 85 runs. 22 years old. Matt Boyle, 22 years old, 70 runs versus Northern Districts. Mitch Hay, 24 years, 30 runs, 50 runs. Zach Fox, 22 years old, 75 not out versus Northern Districts. Thorne Parks, 24 years old, 97 not out and 30 runs for Otago versus Wellington. That game also included Lou Johnson, 25 years old, 80 not out versus Wellington. My favorite batters to watch, Muhammad Abbas first, Lou Johnson second. Lachlan Stackpole, 19 years old, 87 runs versus Central Districts for Auckland. Sam Mycock, 24 years old, 53 runs at the top of the order for Wellington versus Otago. So that's the youngsters in Plunket Shield. Let me check the leading run scorer charts because this is a fascinating area of New Zealand cricket. Nick Kelly, 707 runs, 4 centuries. He's the only dude with more than 3 centuries. Or more than 2 centuries. He's first. Reece Mariu, 663 runs. Then we go down to Bevan Jacobs, 476. Jeet Raval, 471. Dane Cleaver, 430. Tom Bruce, 424. So, shout out Jeet Raval. I mean, he's there. 4 batters who have scored 470 plus runs in Plunket Shield. 2 veterans, Nick Kelly, Jeet Raval. 2 youngsters, Reece Mariu, Bevan Jacobs. I think Bevan Jacobs might dip out of Plunket Shield to go to the IPL soon. And he is also 200 runs behind Reece Mariu. So then it's like, now we've got Nick Kelly and Reece Mariu are the only dudes with more than 500 runs, and they've both got more than 650 runs. I mean, it's fine if Nick Kelly finishes as the leading run scorer. Very good left-handed batter for Wellington. Another one of these established domestic players who hold the fort in setting the standard of New Zealand cricket. But I really want a youngster to lead all 3 competitions for runs. So we're banking on Reece Mariu trying to do that and overtake Nick Kelly. What's the difference here? 40 runs, 50 runs behind or something like that. Also important to note, though, Nick Kelly has had 10 innings. Reece Mariu's had 7 innings. So good stuff there. Let's go football so I can stop talking because my voice is turning to custard. And by custard, I don't mean smooth and silky. I mean the throat is taking a battering from spinning the yarns. But let's go football. Although we are trying to wait for that all-white squad.
Well, we can come back to that if it drops while we're recording.
We can come back to that. I do want to rest my voice. Flying Kiwis, Chris Wood. Apparently, he is now locked and loaded for Champions League footy. Nottingham Forest had a 1-0 win over Manchester City in the Premier League, obviously. But we've also had Marko Stamenic getting a good amount of game time for Olympiacos, and he is a Nottingham Forest player loaned out to Olympiacos. And of course, if we're talking Nottingham Forest, if we're talking Kiwi football, we've got to mention the Bindo, Tyler Bindon, who is awesome. Break down all things Chris Wood, Nottingham Forest for us.
Yeah, they did. They beat Manchester City on the weekend. There was a little bit of a wobble there when they lost consecutively to Fulham and Newcastle, and that was immediately leading into a couple of games where they had an FA Cup, not quarterfinal, but to qualify for the quarterfinals, the round before quarterfinals, and they had a game. I think it might have been away to Arsenal and home to Manchester City was how it went. So three games that were potentially like two massive ones against other teams in the top five of the table, and then an FA Cup game where which was against Ipswich, where it's like your entire season could just be surging towards greatness after these three games, or it could be stumbling back towards a bit of consolidation if it went the wrong way. Well, they ground out a 0-0 draw against Arsenal. They weren't actually very good against Ipswich in the FA Cup with a couple of rotations in there, but they did manage to win the game on a penalty shootout. Obviously, Chris Wood scored in the penalty shootout. So they're into the quarterfinals where they'll face Brighton in the quarterfinals, who they beat 7-0 last time they played them, and Chris Wood scored a hat-trick. So they will be relatively confident that they can do maybe not similar things to Brighton in the FA Cup quarterfinal, but at least they'll know they're in with a big chance to not just have made it this far, but to go even further, to get into a semi-final. And they are the highest remaining ranked Premier League team still in the FA Cup. I think Manchester City is still there, but obviously they're ahead of Manchester City on the table. I think Aston Villa is still there. They're ahead of Aston Villa as well. But Liverpool's already out. Arsenal's already out. And actually, they're the only two teams who are ahead of Nottingham Forest because Nottingham Forest beat Manchester City on the weekend. And it would be cool to come up with like a to lay out like how Chris Wood scored the winning goal or whatever, or his great contributions. He didn't really do a lot in this game though. Lots of defensive stuff. They kind of they mixed up how they set up to try and combat the way that Man City build up from deep. So there was sort of their wingers pushed up. Gibbs White, I think, is their attacking midfield. He pushed up, so they would sort of defend as like a flat floor across the top as kind of a higher block, which absolutely worked wonders because Man City had 3/4 of the ball and could barely create a decent chance. The best chance they had was arguably Chris Wood's fault because him drifting all the way back, winning an interception outside his own penalty area, goes to clear it, and then miskicks the ball, and Haaland takes it and whips a shot just past the post from the edge of the box. That was very early on in the game, and that was the one lapse. Like, other than that, Nottingham Forest were excellent defensively, probably heading towards a 0-0 draw, which I think they'd have comfortably taken. They'd have been very happy with a draw that would have kept them ahead of Man City. But then Callum Hudson-Odoi smacks one in from a tight angle at the near post in the 83rd minute, and they end up turning a good performance into a great one by walking away with a 1-0 win. That gives them, a big lift against Manchester City, who dropped to 5th because of this result, because Chelsea also won. So Chelsea are up to 4th. But I think it's 4 points between Nottingham Forest now and Man City in 5th, which I was thinking top 4 Champions League, that's all you got to do. It turns out they might make Champions League even if they finish 5th, because the change in the Champions League format means there's 36 teams in the league phase instead of 32 in what used to be the group stage. So they give a couple of extra ones out to make up the difference. I think they just probably let a couple extra qualifiers in, but they also give an extra automatic spot to the 2 nations that have the best performances across the season based on their coefficient formulas, whatever. I have no idea how to work out the coefficient formulas, but other people do. And from the research I can gather, it seems extremely likely that England, who still have, I think, a couple teams left in the Champions League and probably I think they've got teams left in all 3 of the European tournaments. they're extremely likely to get one of those, and it's probably going to be Spain who gets the other one, which would mean fifth place gets Champions League. And there's no qualifying either for this because of the changes in formats as well. They're just straight into the league phase. So that's a guaranteed 8 games of Champions League football. Nottingham Forest, yeah, they if they finish third, it would be incredible. Guaranteed Champions League. If they drop to fourth, still getting Champions League. If they drop to fifth, probably still getting Champions League. So it's looking, it's not quite a guarantee at this stage. They still got 10 games to go to grind it out, but also their fixture list remaining games are pretty decent. They played Chelsea in the last game of the season, by which point it might not even matter. They might have already qualified. They also play Aston Villa before that. Everyone else they play is in the bottom half of the table, and they've been amazing at putting away teams in the bottom half of the table. So, like, the prospects of Chris Wood playing Champions League football have never been brighter, have never been closer to reality. But of course, it wouldn't just be Chris Wood, because there's a good chance that he might be bringing along with him Marko Stamenic and Tyler Bindon. So if Marko Stamenic, who did get 90 minutes for Olympiacos this week, it's the first time he's played 90 minutes for a very long time. He had a little bit of an injury, so he missed a bit of game time through February. He's come back since then, but even before that, he wasn't like, he's kind of their fourth choice center midfielder. They play with 2 center midfielders, so it's not easy for him to get opportunities. They got a couple very experienced, so like I think a Spaniard and a Brazilian who are really good in that position. And then they've also got a young Greek guy who's like a homegrown talent, which obviously the fans want to see the homegrown talent playing as much as they can. So they think they won the like under 19s Champions League equivalent or something like that, or Europa League equivalent or something last season. They also won the Conference League, the third tier European competition, but it looks like they're probably going to get knocked out of the Europa League knockouts. They lost 3-0 to Bodo Glimt of Norway in their first leg of that. That was the away leg, but they're not really a team that scores a lot of goals, so I'm not sure if they'll be able to overturn that. However, they did absolutely thrash AEK Athens in the first leg of their cup semi-final, and they are in first place of the Greek Super League. That game that Marko Stamenic started on the weekend, he'd mostly been getting like a lot of unused sub things, and then a few like 20 minutes here, 10 minutes there for the last couple of months. So this was a beautiful sight to see him getting 90 minutes in what was a 1-0 victory, a clean sheet victory, which further consolidates him at the top of the table. So while he hasn't played as much as he might like, still very much on course for the League and Cup double, which, of course, because it's Marko Stamenic, that would mean League and Cup double in Greece after a League and Cup double in Serbia after a League and Cup double in Denmark. So he just wins stuff wherever he goes. Probably another reason Nottingham Forest might actually want to keep him around next season, but we'll see how that goes, because like I say, he hasn't played enough to make that hasn't played enough to make me feel confident about that. But he is on loan from Forest, so there will be things they're working on with the scouts and the coaching teams will be in close contact and all that shared ownership. So just because he's not playing doesn't mean that that's going off the rails or anything. But we don't know what's going on behind closed doors. But we'll see. Hopefully, there's a chance there. But I'm increasingly, the more Tyler Bindon plays each week, the more I'm thinking like there's no reason to loan him out. He's obviously not going to walk straight into being a Premier League starter, but I can absolutely see him being part of their Premier League squad and not being loaned, like just hanging around for the season. And if you're playing Champions League, you're going to have a lot of those like Tuesday, Wednesdays, and then Sunday games, and those short turnarounds, 8 Champions League games as well. So it is tricky to fit that in, and they have a very consistent team that they like to pick. They will need to be able to rotate a lot more. You need to expand your squad. You've just signed Tyler Bindon. He's amazing for Reading every week in different ways as well. Like, he's just remarkably consistent, plays like a player with 10 years more experience than he actually has. And I mean, just like every subsequent week watching him, seeing what he does for Reading, I'm like, I don't think they need to loan him out for development or anything. I think he's good to go as a squad member, not as a first 11 player, but as a squad member in a Premier League club. I think he could do that next season. And yeah, that might not just mean playing Premier League football. That might also mean playing Champions League football, which would be pretty incredible. Marko Stamenic has played Champions League already with both Copenhagen and Red Star Belgrade, so he'd be looking to make it be looking to make it a third team that he's played Champions League with. Chris Wood's never played Champions League. Tyler Bindon's obviously only just at the start of his career. He's never played Champions League. That would be beyond special if we can get that. That's the best case scenario, is all three of them playing Champions League games together next season for Nottingham Forest. That probably is a little bit too much to ask, but the fact that it's even a possibility, the fact that it's even within the realms of maybe potentially happening is incredible enough on its own. Just to be able to dream about something like that is crazy enough.
We're still dreaming about a Auckland FC A-League Championship. And they are still top of the table after drawing 1-1 with Newcastle United. Solid display, not the best, but not the worst. And, of course, we'll get into Wellington Phoenix as a club, but the Wellington Phoenix men stunk it up on the weekend. Interestingly, Auckland FC have conceded 18 goals this season, which is no longer the fewest, but they've conceded 18 goals this season. Wellington Phoenix have scored 18 goals this season. Auckland FC have scored 37 goals. Wellington Phoenix have conceded 30 goals. So that's where the two teams are at. Wellington Phoenix this coming weekend, they're away to Sydney FC, who are 7th. Wellington Phoenix are 11th. And of course, Auckland FC are hosting Central Coast Mariners. Let me confirm this because I'm terrible with my A-League fixtures. But they are hosting the Mariners, and the Mariners are 10th. One spot ahead of the Wellington Phoenix. So who knows? That might be just a celebration at Mount Smart Stadium for Auckland City. Auckland FC football. Beg your pardon. Got to get my Aucklands correct there. Shout out to Auckland City. I think they're off to the club, World Club Cup thingy.
Yeah, a couple months, I think, still before that happens. But they're actually starting their Northern League campaign this week, a week ahead of everyone else, because they have to cram in not just one game, but two games. They're playing a weekend and a midweek game to cram them in so that they can clear room in the schedule later on to be able to just, pop off to America, play Bayern Munich, see what happens. Adam Mitchell versus Harry Kane,
I'm sure there's like some football fan out there who's like, whoa, Auckland City, that's that new A-League team, mate, the new Auckland team. That's doing really well.
I bet we'll even hear it from like the commentators at the tournament, I reckon that'll be extremely common. I don't reckon that's one or two people just making a mistake. I think they're all going to do that. Let alone poor old Auckland United, third wheel.
Wait, so let's do an Auckland check. We got Auckland FC in the A-League. We got Auckland City, and we've got Auckland United. But is there an Auckland United men's team?
Yeah. They didn't qualify for National League last year, but they were in it the last couple of years before that. Auckland United's probably it might even be the biggest club in Auckland now. I don't know how they do it. I'm not involved in the Auckland club scene anymore at grassroots stuff, so I don't know if it's like playing 7th division open men's stuff. You might be playing against Auckland United, but that was a combo club of Three Kings and I think Onehunga, which Onehunga was pretty big, but Three Kings was massive. You always had like Three Kings teams in every one of those social divisions.
That's nitty gritty. We don't need to worry about. But the Auckland FC reserves, they're going to still be the Auckland FC reserves.
Yes. And they will be in the same Northern League competition as Auckland City and Auckland United.
Yeah, gotcha.
And probably in the same National League as well. Auckland City will qualify for that. Auckland FC have an automatic spot, their reserves. And Auckland United will have to try get back up into the National League because they didn't make it last year, but they'll be in contention.
Rightio, good stuff. Auckland FC had a draw with Newcastle United. This is kind of irrelevant to the discussion, but having not talked glowingly about Chico Heraldes, I was watching Moreno because Heraldes played left midfield for the Phoenix in their big loss, and Moreno was playing left midfield for Auckland FC. And I was like, Moreno's way better than Chico Heraldes. So I don't think that's like groundbreaking news or anything. Like I'm not tapping into my Generation XG insights here. I think anyone who watches football can see Moreno's better than Chico Heraldez. But there was just like there was one moment, especially when I think it might have been Randall, the young striker. He made a mistake or something, and then Moreno was like rallying him. He was like giving him a paki little clap of the hands, little mana boost to him, and I was like, that's the stuff I want to see from one of my overseas imports who, to like, he feels like he should be a Chico Heraldez player. Moreno. Razzle dazzle, might not do the work on defense, might kick up a stink, but all those imports for Auckland FC, whether it's Moreno, Mai, Gallios, the centre back, Hall, and of course Sakai, who has already established himself as an Aotearoa sporting legend. The imports for Auckland FC, like they all just seem like good people. They're good workers. They set the tone with the work rate as well as the footballing skill, the execution, the physicality. Like Auckland FC, they'll press you high up the field. They'll bully you off the football. That's what they do. Approaching the final stages of the A-League season, watched a lot of Auckland FC. They will bully you off the football, which I love to see. But quite often it's the imports leading that. It's the imports doing the work. And I also love to see that. And I'd also highlight that I think it was the Auckland FC goal where Sakai crossed the ball in and someone did a header, but they also got injured. Jesse Randall did the header, but he got injured. Sakai playing right back, wizard of a right foot, but he does the cross for the goal with his left foot, which I was just like starstruck. It's like, bro, this dude's amazing. But then you've also got Tommy Smith. He's a left footer. Then Nando's a left footer. Then Franny de Vries is a left footer. But your right back can cross the ball with his left foot. I mean, that's Auckland FC like summed up in a nutshell right there.
Yeah, I actually wrote this down. I took a note of it during the game about Nader Moreno. There was 2 times in a row mid first half. I can't remember the exact circumstance. There was 2 times where he made like an effort play on defense, whether it was pressing or like tracking back or something. And I wrote it down because I was like, was he doing this before? Like, was he always making that kind of effort? I'm not sure if he was. I don't know, but I jotted it down so I'd remember it, thinking specifically, well, if he wasn't before, he certainly is now. And I will say that about like withholding a bit of, well, I'm withholding all my judgment on Chico Heraldez at this point because he's playing in a team that's just so badly out of form that one guy wasn't going to make a difference. And also, I think 3, 4, 5 games into the season, people were saying similar-ish things about Moreno. I certainly remember a bit of like, I don't know if I'm convinced about this guy yet. Then there was that streak where it's like they played better when he wasn't starting for the first couple months. Like he was coming off the bench and having nice impacts, but then he had a run of starts and that coincided with their worst little spell of form. He's clearly settled in after a while. I think that's a lesson, especially when you get players from like from footballing situations that are quite like cultures that are quite different to how the A-League likes to play, which is very like it's not battler centric, but certainly some of those battler qualities do get emphasized. Maybe takes a little while to get up to speed with that.
It's a lesson I'm not applying to my observations. I respect your insights, but it's not something that I'm applying to my observations. You were talking about me with Moreno. Like we were having these discussions on the podcast about Moreno and his role there. One other thing though is, I mean, you got me thinking like earlier in the season, Verstraeta's the best player in the A-League. That's what everyone's saying. How awesome Verstraeta is in the center midfield role. Auckland FC also look fantastic with Brimmer and Gallios. Like they don't, and they're also playing without Mata up front, right, against Newcastle.
Yeah.
Randall got the opportunity up front. Earlier in the season, Gillian was starting a lot of games. Now you've got Randall as a youngster starting games. Like throughout the season, I've kind of learned like, don't necessarily like Start of the season, best centre back duo in the A League, Nando and Dan Hall. Well, Dan Hall's injured. Tommy Smith gets the gig. Tommy Smith, win an eye, does the job. Like, it doesn't. We can't cling to, oh, this one player for Auckland FC. He's the man. He's crucial. It's this combination. No, Auckland FC are deep, and that depth is ready to do the job. And they're all slightly different, so they all do their job slightly different. But I just remember watching that midfield because I like Brimmer earlier in the season. To me, he seemed like a more attacking midfielder. Gallios, he works hard, he does all the basics well, but again, he's not Verstrada who hangs back as a super duper classy Alex Rufa. But they've kind of tinkered with how that midfield operates. They don't need the centre defensive midfielder right now, because the whole team just works well. They've got lots of players. They've got fantastic imports. They've got fantastic young players from Aotearoa, senior players from Aotearoa. I mean, Auckland FC, they're just a good team that is fun to watch. But again, sorry for hijacking your point.
No, but that's an important thing about how the season has progressed, is they've evolved. They're not the same team now that they were at the start. And a lot of those changes as well have been like, Verstrada dropping out as a defensive midfielder, and Brimmer, who was playing as an attacking midfielder, plays deeper in a, something closer to Verstrada's role. But also, they're different players. So if you put that player in the same position, you're not getting the same output, because Brimmer is still not naturally going to be more of a passer. He's looking to drift around and link up and play 1-2s and create stuff, whereas Verstrada was very much like a stopper at the back. That has probably, and Max Mata as well. I don't think nothing's really changed too much with Smith coming in for Dan Hall. That's just a centre back swap. But certainly, I've talked a few times about Max Mata coming in and instigating things for for their attack, and just having a target man. Guillermo Mai plays deeper, runs around. Did annoy me a little bit how he played on the weekend, though. I think he's scored a couple big goals from outside the box. Now he just seems to want to drift into space to find those shots every time, which you've got runs on the board, so we'll give you credit, But and also I'll say it's not as frustrating as watching Costa Barbarossa's play at the moment, where it's just everything seems to be trying to get the ball to his feet and create stuff. And like, this is not why he was so good last season. He's an off the ball player. Like, you want his movement off the ball. You want to be playing like, passes in behind and trying to thread things through and get Costa receiving the ball in motion, not Costa dropping the ball back, holding it up, whipping it around. Like, that's just clearly not working for the Knicks. But that's a whole other can of worms there. But yeah, the ways in which Auckland have evolved. Also, I would say Moreno starting ahead of Gillian is another example of this. They've evolved in a way where it's expanded how they're trying to play, and it's made them a much more potent attacking team. It's given them more options in attack. It's given them more sort of creative players on the ball in possession, because at the start of the season, they were a team that played in the mold of Louis Verstrada. They shut you out. They picked off set pieces. They could counterattack, but most of all, they were just really good defensively. They've dipped a little bit defensively since then, but they've gotten better on attack than they have worse on defense. So they've just become a better, more well-rounded team, and they've figured this out as they go along. It's just been a natural thing. They started with a pretty conservative approach, and they've slowly stripped that. Stripped off the conceits there to where they're adding little wrinkles here, there, and everywhere, and I think they are a better team now. They're on an 8-game unbeaten streak. They started the season on a 7-game unbeaten streak. They've now beaten that. They're on an 8-game unbeaten streak thanks to a pretty gritty draw in Newcastle, because they had to play most of that second half with 10 men after Verstrada got sent off, which I thought was very harsh. I also understand why they gave it, but I didn't actually think there wasn't a stomp on his leg. It was just like the leg, he won the ball and then flowed through a little bit. And I don't know that there was actually that much contact, but it's one of those ones you can find a freeze frame that looks like he's tried to slice his leg in half. So they're always going to send him off at that point. But regardless of how it happened, the fact is they ground out that game with 10 men, and actually if anything, looked more likely to find a winner towards the end. And Newcastle couldn't break them down even when they had a man advantage. It was kind of crazy how well Auckland FC handled that situation. They will be without Verstrada next week. Don't think that matters because he wasn't going to be starting anyway, the way they've been playing. They will also, though, be without I think it was Nando Pinecker, wasn't it? Got himself a yellow card, so he'll be suspended for the next one, and they'll have to figure out another centre back partnership because I don't think Dan Hall's back, but I do think he's played a little bit of time in preseason friendlies for the reserve team, so he's close. Don't know if they'll rush him back so soon. I think you'd probably just slide Sakai into the middle and start Kellen Elliott, which they've done before, but that'll be an interesting game against Central Coast because Central Coast also, the difference with Central Coast and the Wellington Phoenix is the Wellington Phoenix had one great season and then had to go on a bit of a rebuild after selling a few too many players at once. Central Coast had two championship level seasons, won two championships in a row, but they're now in a similar spot to the Phoenix where it's like a lot of players left, a lot of players sold or transferred to bigger opportunities and brighter, more lucrative leagues around the world. And maybe this is a year for restocking the shelves because they're also both the two teams. In fact, the Phoenix used the Central Coast comparison a lot to justify themselves going heavily academy-based and homegrown talent type stuff. Well, both of the two teams that are the most known for that in this league are currently in rebuilding phases where they're having to restock the shelves. So there's a little bit of an interesting element to that one as well, which is also why Auckland FC will probably smash them on the weekend.
At the Temple of Mount Smart, quick summary of the Wellington Phoenix men.
Oh, I mean, it is a next season situation at this point, and they're not coming out of this one with any kind of glory. I can only repeat that element. There's not. Hopefully, they'll get a couple nice results before now and the end of the season. But I think there was a comparison between how the women played on the weekend in a situation where they'd taken 1 point of their last 5 games. The Phoenix men had taken 2 points from their previous 5 games, but of course they lost this weekend, so that's now 2 points from 6 games, whereas the women won. The thing is, the Phoenix conceded early, and the Phoenix men conceded early in their game and kind of just looked like, oh, well, that's the game gone. The Phoenix women conceded a terrible goal where one of their import defenders took her eye off the ball, lost possession, and then striker runs through and scores. But throughout that game, I still felt like the Phoenix women had the confidence and the belief in themselves that they could come back and win that game, which eventually they did. And I just never got that vibe from the Phoenix blokes. I think they're so devoid of confidence at the moment, and confidence is kind of a superpower in sports. And yeah, when you got it, it makes all the difference. And when you don't have it, it also makes all the difference because you look like what the Wellington Phoenix have looked like for the last couple of weeks in the A-League men's.
You did mention the woman quickly there, and I'm not sure, I can't remember if I set the parameters on your hard and fast Wellington Phoenix wrap-up. I just wanted the men, and you did a good job of that. But the Wellington Phoenix women did have a impressive victory. So do you have any more thoughts? I will allow you to expand on your women's thoughts, mainly because the women are much more fun than the men.
Yeah, very, very gracious of you. They are a lot more fun than the men, and even throughout, because that idea about how the Phoenix the blokes just look sad and they look like they don't really have a lot of confidence in what they're doing. I've never really gotten that vibe from the women, even when they were losing a few games in a row there. They never got thrashed at any point the way that the Phoenix guys have. Like the lads have been thrashed by Auckland FC and thrashed by now, Western United within the space of 3 games, and they lost the one in between that as well. The Phoenix women have never had that problem this season. Like they've been when they've lost, it's felt like they're just maybe I don't know, a little bit of execution or a little bit of a mistake here or there that didn't cause, but they've never been blown away by any of these teams. They've always been close, and that's partly what's been frustrating about it. It's feeling that they probably should be winning a few more of these, in particular their away games, because their form at home has been very good. Did lose 2 games ago to Adelaide at home, but that's a strong Adelaide team that's up near the top of the table. So they caught them off a little bit, but they responded very well the following game, even though they played from a deficit for most of it. There were chances throughout against who'd they play on the weekend? Western Sydney, wasn't it? I think there were chances throughout that game where it was like, if you're just a little bit more clinical, you might have been 3-1 up at halftime, let alone the fact that you made one little mistake, cost you a goal, but then also at least they were creating things throughout. I think Olivia Ferguson had 3 or 4 chances where it's like she kept getting onto crosses at the near post, and then she'd be like side netting here, side netting there. It's like, just glance it across the goal and you'll be fine. The keeper's probably not going to have time to react. Eventually, though, she did that in the 86th minute, whatever it was. Perfect, like brilliant finish. A guided side footer off a great cross from Zoe McMeekin. Really do want to see more Zoe McMeekin, especially at right back, when they've alternated a lot between Olivia Kelly and Tiana Jaber there at right back. With whoever isn't playing right back will be playing centre back. They're probably both centre backs. But yeah, after seeing McMeekin come on with another bright spell, and I do feel like she is ready for a more consistent starts there, and just having a specialist fullback who gives them a bit more attack. Like, you'll lose a bit out in defensively from that swap, but you'd gain more going forward, and I think that's what they need a little bit more, and might be one of those Auckland FC-esque evolutions that they come up with across the season, because they're getting that from Lara Wall on the left. It'd just be nice if they also had that a bit more from the right. But yeah, Mibe Tanaka comes off the bench, slams in a fantastic finish. Olivia Ferguson guides in a beauty with about 5 minutes to go. 2 imports, giving them great impact, and then also Zoe McMeekin setting up that goal. Mibe Tanaka also as a substitute, so a couple substitutions as well, but having a big say in the way that game ended up going, which is something that Paul Temple highlighted afterwards, saying like when they've won games, it's generally had a lot to do with their substitutions being really effective. Like, the players they've brought on have been able to add to things and carry them forward. And that was they rode a very fine line there with only getting that win near the end, but it was a performance that probably warranted them winning more comfortably. But when you're coming out of a stretch where you haven't been winning games, sometimes you just need to get an ugly one first. It wasn't even that much of an ugly win, but they had to really grind it out. They had to play for 90 minutes to get that one. Sometimes you just need that, and then you can build off of that moving forward. And that was the game as well where they didn't have Grace Jale, who's still injured since Football Ferns duty. Also didn't have Mackenzie Barry, who missed this game with an injury picked up late as well. So there's a couple pretty important players that weren't available for them as well, and because of that, they needed to get another centre back in there. So Maya McCutcheon plays centre back, and Daisy Brazendale comes in. So you miss out on one of your best midfielders, even though she's still on the park. She's not doing midfield things in the same way. So, yeah, for them to get a victory in the way that they did, the circumstances that they did, and at the time that they did, because they're now only 1 point off the top 6. I've seen a lot of things. It's not quite as bad as why do Blackcaps keep losing finals takes, but I've seen a lot of these like. Keep their finals hopes alive with a victory. 1 point outside the top 6 with 5 games to go. That's not keeping it alive. That's charging towards finals if they can continue on this way. So I think that's they desperately needed that win. They had to get those 3 points. They did, and now because they did, they put themselves in a situation where they're in a really good spot to continue the charge towards the top 6. So. Phoenix fans might just want to forget about the men for a little while and focus on the women for the next 5 weeks, because they actually look like they're building towards something in the short term.
Well, let's get your quick reaction to the All Whites squad for the Oceania qualifiers coming up. Jesse Randall of Auckland Blue Rider fame, he's in the squad. What else? And I do emphasize the quick because we need to roll through these quickly. So we got an all-white squad. How are you feeling about it? Any key players? Any little pockets that you're interested in?
Yeah, fortunately, it only needs to be a quick recap because it's almost identical to the squad they had last time. Just, I think there might be an extra or one less player picked. I'm not sure exactly the numbers, but when they played end of last year, Liam Gilliam was starting a lot of games for Auckland FC and it surged into contention, goes straight into the national team, makes its debut. I remember saying at the time that was very premature, but it was also like they needed a speedy winger. And he was a guy who was available and there. He's dropped out of the mix for Auckland FC lately, but Jesse Randall's come into the mix for Auckland FC, so he's also a speedy winger. He played striker on the weekend, but he can play on the wing, so he's probably more of a striker, but versatile enough to play wherever, and he's fast. And Ben Older's still injured, so there's no Ben Older's getting close though. He's probably only a few weeks away. He might even I think they're targeting the PSG game at the very end of this month, which would be a week too late for international duty. Even still, you're out for 4 months. You probably don't want to go straight into a flight back and play and then fly back around the world again. Makes sense to leave him on the sideline. They have picked Elijah Just, though, who hasn't played his last couple games in Austria since going off injured in their first game after the winter break. So I guess that suggests that they're hoping, maybe he'll even play for his club. There's one more chance to play for his club before then. So I guess they're hoping that injury is not too bad. Haven't been able to find out anything about diagnosis or whatever, but if he broke his leg, he obviously wouldn't be in this squad. So that's good news for Eli Just, who has scored in 4 consecutive All Whites games, as has Chris Wood as well. Like both of them are on big scoring streaks. Is it 4 or is it 3? It's at least 3, definitely. I think it's 4. And the only other notable thing about the squad they have picked Matt Garbutt, who hasn't played a game since December, which I'm not surprised by because I think Darren Baisley loves Matt Garbutt. He made him the captain at the Olympic squad. So always sort of assumed he was going to pick him. I'm not sure you can quite justify that when he hasn't played a game for 3 months, but still, he'll get to play some games here at least. He's in desperate need for a little bit of game time, and the All Whites can at least offer him some of that. But also Finn Sermon's not in the squad, and Finn Sermon's not in the squad because the MLS doesn't break for international windows. Michael Boxall is. He's the captain of Minnesota United, though, so he can skip a game and it's not going to make a difference. He'll just go back and pick up where he left off after the international break. He'll miss one game, no dramas. Finn Sermon's right at the start of his career with Portland, so if he misses a game here, someone else might come in, do well, and then he's stuck on the bench watching for a long time. So I think it means a lot more for him having started the first 3 games of the season with Portland to continue getting those consistent starts at club level when he probably wouldn't be starting necessarily for the All Whites anyway. So he might be. I kind of lean towards maybe a Sermon Bindon partnership being the best one they've got at the moment, but I don't think you lose anything out by having Boxall Bindon instead, which would be my pick. You might even go Bindon Pinnaker, sweet as, like there's just good centre backs. It's not really a problem. They can absorb that absence, and it just makes a lot more sense for Finn Sermon to prioritize the bigger picture and stay at his club and get hopefully a few more starts in a row. Like can just lock into the starting 11 spot he's competing for with the Timbers. So that's the only notable change. Randall in for Gillian. Sermon drops out for club reasons. Eli Justin, Matt Garbutt are picked despite recent maybe not playing for their clubs in the last one due to injury, one due to just a weird coach doesn't want him situation. But very consistent squad with what we saw last time. All the other big names are there, and they will be trying to qualify for the World Cup with these 2 games, a semi-final against Fiji and then a final afterwards a couple of days later. Games that they should win, games that they probably will win, but also everything's a little bit more in focus because there's an enormous prize on the line.
Let's move into the rugby league section where we had our first Kiwi-NRL debutant of the season with Manurewa Junior Salesi Foketi making his debut for the Roosters in their big loss to the Broncos. There is a bit of a weird vibe with the Roosters. I just don't really know what their plans are. They just because it's obvious to hear and see the players who have left the NRL team, but there's also players who have left their junior system Like Kahu Kappa came back to the Warriors. Cassius Tia moved to the Bulldogs. So there's a bunch of those examples deeper in the Roosters system where it is quite tricky to assess what they're up to. But they do have youngsters like Foketi. Another one is Benaya Iowelu, a hooker who I imagine they are looking at to step into the Brandon Smith role, because ever since Brandon Smith went to the Roosters, the only noise and the only media news about Brandon Smith is how he's going to leave the Roosters because he sucks at the Roosters. So the whole thing is just confusing. Like, the Roosters sign players and then they let them go, or we hear how they're not cultural fits. They don't fit the process. Like, you signed them. What are you doing? Like, the Roosters are just a weird vibe, but that is to say, if Brandon Smith does leave the Roosters, they have Benaya Iowelu, who went to Tangaroa College, a junior at a bunch of clubs in Auckland, ready to play dummy half. And I do suspect Iowelu will make his debut for the Roosters this year, following on from Foketi. Foketi played 52 minutes in his debut, which is a monster effort for a youngster who must now be, I think he's 19 years old. He's 19 years old, played 52 minutes, mainly as a middle forward, but he did shift out to the right edge later on in the game as well. And I saw him running, I saw him tackling, and I saw him passing. So he was filling those roles that are very important for an NRL forward pack, where you can't just be a runner of the footy. You have to be able to shift the footy and do your job in the same attacking shapes that, to be honest, every NRL team has. So it was it was a stinker of a game for the Roosters, with Siwa Wong also in their team, Manurewa Burnham Jr., Nofahu White from Bay Roscoe in Auckland. He was in the team as well. So there's those young forwards got lots of game time, lots of opportunity in a big loss. But Foketi was pretty impressive given the role he had to play 52 minutes straight. Didn't have a break after entering the game. I think that was because Victor Radley came off injured. And he had a crack. It's hard to say the Roosters suck. So that it is what it is. But Foketi as an individual showed his class as a youngster and why he has progressed quickly through the Roosters system. So watch out for him as we move deeper into the season, but also in that game for the Broncos, someone to watch out for this season, Xavier Willison. He does have that Taharoa connection with Tomato Martin, Taintua Piki with the Warriors, but also Tanika Willison, who was playing for the Knights last season in NRLW. But Xavier Willison is also a Fatafata Junior, which I believe is in the Waikato. And he came off the bench with the exact same running stats as Jordan Ricky, apparently. 13 runs, 145 meters, 11.1 meters per run. Willison played 37 minutes, and that's roughly the same amount of game time he had last season coming off the bench. I think he averaged 38 minutes per game last season. And the running stats are inflated because of the victory over the Roosters. But Willison has always shown impact through the middle as a big bopper. Regardless of how many games, how many minutes he's playing for the Broncos, he's always added oomph through the middle for the Broncos. And he's already a Cook Island international. I think he's also got some Tongan heritage, which might be interesting if he wants to go down that path. But so I don't want to diminish his Cook Island international status. Willison, if the Kiwis, he's next up for the Kiwis. I listed this in the newsletter. We got Fisher Harris, Leota, Tapane, Asafa Solomona, Leo Thompson, Griffin Neem, Nofahu White. Then I've got Willison. Now, you can have Papali'i playing through the middle. Jordan Rickey's an edge forward, another Broncos player to watch out for this season, reconnecting with Michael Maguire. They can play through the middle, like Scott Sorensen talked about him last week. They can play edge and play middle, so they're good to have on the bench. But if we're talking straight, pure big boppers through the middle, Willison, like if there was a Kiwi squad named anytime soon, he'd be in that squad, to my mind. And I expect him to play his way into a Kiwi squad very soon, but also respect to the Cook Islands. And I do believe he's got some Tongan links. Same with Foketi. So Foketi's a Manurewa junior from South Auckland, but he played for Tonga in the cultural tournaments in Auckland and Aotearoa, but he also played for Tonga A versus New Zealand A. So expect Salesi Foketi to pursue Tonga representative football. Again, we don't know what's like. These are choices the players make, but there are checkpoints that inform you of their likeliest decision. Foketi played for Tonga A. He's come up playing for Tonga in Auckland. The cultural rugby league scene in New Zealand is massive. So they can play for Samoa, they can play for Tonga, they can play for Niue, they can play for Cook Islands, they can play for Māoris. Foketi always played for Tonga A. Seems likely he's going to pursue a international career with Tonga as well. So that's my best guess at where Foketi will go. But also Willison, he's got some funky eligibility stuff happening there as well. He's already represented the Māoris a few times for the All-Stars game, and he is a very big, very powerful middle forward who Broncos recruited him from he was playing Waikoa Bay under 17s. It was a deep cut recruit. It's not like he was dominating New Zealand Rugby League, cracking all the teams, the rep teams. He just appeared at a tournament. Broncos recruited him, went to Palm Beach, Currumbin, and just dominated straight away over in Australia. Now he's with the Broncos. High pedigree junior, not a high pedigree junior. Sorry, that's not factual. That's not actual factual. But a very impressive junior who the Broncos recruited, who was quickly successful in Australia. So we're talking like Jordan Rickey was a high pedigree junior, made all the rep teams, but then you go Dean Mariner, Xavier Willison, who had very quick progress in the Australian systems in Southeast Queensland. I mentioned Bronson Rubin earlier in the podcast. Stepped up to under 21 jersey flag with the Bulldogs. Very impressive hooker. Very impressive half to watch out for. And another little train spotter note to take us into the Warriors. Tough, results-wise, I don't think it was their best weekend in the junior ranks, but who cares about junior results? Kalis Putoko did score the try in their jersey flag loss, though. And I was talking up Putoko because he moved to the Titans. He left First 15 Rugby in New Zealand, where he made the New Zealand secondary schools rugby union team. Then he went to the Titans. Now he's back in New Zealand playing for the Warriors under 21. So he's someone to watch out for. Was getting a bit of buzz over with the Titans last summer. And now he's back with the Warriors in Aotearoa. The Warriors SG ball team, they had 3 try scorers and none of them were from Auckland. So we got Mason Lome Hindle. He's from Otago Boys High School. Rico Lemale is from Linwood, another one from Christchurch. And Elijah Solomona is a Wainui Amata Jr. from Wellington, who also went to St. Pat's Silverstream. I think he may still be at St. Pat's Silverstream. Don't know. But that is part of, you got a lot of players from Christchurch in all Kiwi-NRL ranks. We got a Warriors Academy deep south, Otago Academy, which also had Kairos Booth Hill. But you've also got St. Pat's Silverstream connection because the SG Ball halfback, Maui Winatana Patalaseo, went to St. Pat's Silverstream. Rocco Berry went to St. Pat Silverstream. Toby Crosby went to St. Pat Silverstream. Rocco Berry, he played 41 minutes for Warriors in reserve grade this weekend, seemed to be managing his minutes. Toby Crosby played 21 minutes off the bench for the Warriors in their win over the Raiders, 18-16. Not too worried about Junior Warriors results. Am interested in New South Wales Cup results, though. So it was a good win to start their season. Crosby, 6 runs, 63 meters, 10 meters per run at least. So that was a good start for him, stepping up to New South Wales Cup footy. And I mean, Morgan Harper, powerful outside back that he is, dominated the stat sheet, at least. 17 runs, 158 meters, so he's doing his job on the wing. My favorite player, 2 tries, 10 runs, 118 meters, Moalagram Taufa. I'd say he should be in the NRL group, but you can go player for player in this New South Wales Cup team and make a case that most of them should be in the NRL team. Because there's a lot of good players here, and that's why I'm interested in the Warriors at New South Wales Cup level. Some other just like crude statistics. Tom Alley, 47 minutes, 19 runs, 166 meters, 8.7 meters per run. Jacob Laban, full 80 minutes. He can do it. He can play NRL. 15 runs, 110 meters, 7.3 meters per run. Tanner Stowers Smith, 39 minutes, 12 runs, 123 meters, 10.2 meters per run. Crosby officially averaged 10.5 meters per run. So, like, the Warriors are cooking in New South Wales Cup to start the season. Sam Healy, the dummy half, 8 runs, 5.3 meters per dummy half run, 2 kicks out of dummy half, showing his skill set there. Tamaiti Martin had 2 kicks. Tanner Boyd had 8 kicks. Tanner Boyd also went 3 from 3 with the conversions. I'm throwing all these details up because it's important relating to the Warriors at the NRL level where they suck at kicking conversions. We've got a goofy selections and all sorts of stuff happening. So these are relevant stats. And if you want more stats, Tamaiti Martin versus Tanner Boyd, touches, Martin 41, Tanner Boyd 50, passes, Martin 33, Boyd 40, runs, Tamaiti Martin 12, Tanner Boyd 14. So that just tells you Tanner Boyd playing as a classic halfback, Martin playing as a classic number 6. Not too complicated. Now, the Warriors are preparing to play Manly Sea Eagles on Friday night. Obviously a fascinating game because the Warriors need a win. They need an impressive performance, and they especially need that at Mount Smart Stadium. We're recording this on Tuesday, so we've got no idea who's going to be selected, and that's kind of really important. Because if we're going with Jackson forward for big minutes once again, like, they might not win. And like, you can literally say Tanner Boyd, Tamaiti Martin is a better halves combination than Luke Metcalf, Chanel Harris-Tavita. And that sums up the 2 teams right now, New South Wales Cup and NRL Warriors. So it's a very interesting Teamless Tuesday coming up, or after you listen to this, because Andrew Webster can stick with the same team and expect them, hope that they can catch a vibe at the Temple of Mount Smart. You know, Auckland FC, the Blue Riders, they've been whipping up Mount Smart into a frenzy, big crowds, fun footy. Maybe the Warriors tap into that. Maybe they don't. Because it can go 2 ways. You can select the same team and hope that they put out a better performance, you can select the same team and get the same result. Now, this is coming up against the Manly Sea Eagles, who destroyed the Cowboys in the first game of the season for them. First of all, some of those big losses in the rest of round one reflect positively on the Warriors. They didn't get 50 put on them. And there were actually other NRL teams who might not have had summer training. Because it's fascinating to watch round one and see the difference in quality between these teams, given that they should all, in theory, be doing the same training. And just a goofy little note here. The best thing you can do as an NRL club, franchise, organization, is to not broadcast your army camp. Because now we're moving into the cycle where every NRL club does the army camp. They all tell you about the army camp, and they probably, most of them, film their army camp. But it's clear that not all your army camps are the same. Because you can just look at results. If you're all doing the army camp and you're all filming your army camp and you're all big up in yourself about your army camp, that should not be evident in the results. But the coolest thing you can do as an NRL team right now is just pretend like you didn't do an army camp. Don't make a video about your army camp. Don't tell anyone about your army camp. Just get on with it, do it, and do it in the background. Because now the trendy thing is, we need to tell everyone about our army camp. I think we're past that point now. We're past the point where everyone's filming their army camp. But again, it's just crazy how every NRL team celebrates their training over the summer, and none of that is shown in the performances. It's just it's funny to watch, to be honest. It's kind of hilarious. But my advice would be, do your army camp, do whatever you want over the summer, but don't boast about your army camp. We've gone past that. You either shut it down, or you got to be real creative in the rest of your social media, your video content. Because, we're just all the army camps are the same. So they filmed their army camp, but it's just the same shit that the Panthers did 5 years ago, which is the same shit as the Storm did 10 years ago. They're not breaking new ground with their army camps. There we go. Good little rant there. But the Warriors, they are playing the Sea Eagles. Round one results, I do think, reflected well on the Warriors, because there were other teams that sucked. There were other teams that didn't show up for round one. So, okay, Warriors aren't alone in that regard. They're playing at home at Mount Smart, but they're playing against the Sea Eagles, who were sizzling in round one. If the same players for the Warriors show up and play the same way they did against the Raiders, they're getting smashed at home. If Andrew Webster has the same coaching performance, they're getting smashed. So we either select different players or we play different. And that's what we're going to be watching out for. Can the Warriors rectify their round one performance against a very tough opponent in the Sea Eagles? You should be able to get this one. What do the Sea Eagles have that the Warriors don't have?
I'm going to go out on a limb here and say speed.
That's a lot of speed. So the Warriors got shown up by a faster Raiders team in round one. Now they're playing the Sea Eagles, who are just as fast as the Raiders, if not faster. Not just in terms of individual speed, but the speed they play rugby league with, the speed they execute their plays, the speed at which they smash the opposition. So I don't think that's working in the Warriors' favor either. Let me try and conjure up, like, how do the Warriors win this game? Assuming Jackson Ford doesn't play 50 minutes, assuming the selections aren't crazy, how do the Warriors win this game? I don't know.
That's a good start.
I might need some Aotearoa vitamins to spark up the mind there, but I think I don't even know. Like I don't know. I really don't know. Because
Well, making their tackles will be a nice start, I guess. Yeah.
well, that's the thing.
Build
Like
off that.
the thing that first came to mind is like grind the opposition down, and that could actually work against the Sea Eagles. Because the Sea Eagles, they're used to getting into their rhythm, into their flow, shifting the ball, power game, working hard, and all that stuff. But if the Warriors can niggle them, if the Warriors can make them do a lot of work defensively, move them around, take a bit of energy out of their performance, maybe the Sea Eagles, they're a bit jet lagged from the massive flight coming over to New Zealand, doing the Blackcaps travel miles, whereas the Warriors are doing the Indian travel miles, although they did go to Las Vegas, so that doesn't make sense. But the Warriors, I don't think they're going to like out footy the Sea Eagles. They're not going to play more razzle dazzle than the Sea Eagles. But they do have the physicality to grind the Sea Eagles down, although the Sea Eagles have a far better kicking game. So how do you grind down your opponent when Daly Cherry Evans and Luke Brooks are the opposition halves who are good kickers? I don't know. I think it's just the Mount Smart factor. That's how the Warriors win. Maybe they're wearing their blue shirts, the Blue Rider connection with Auckland FC. Maybe that helps them get the win. I don't care how they get the win, to be honest. I don't know how they're going to do it. They need a win. It can be okay if they have a tough performance in which they have a narrow loss or there's some bullshit referee decision that doesn't go their way. I can accept that. Otherwise, the Warriors just need to get 2 points in the bag and inspire the fan base is probably a good way to put it, because there was nothing inspiring about round one, and that flowed on from last season. It was all the same issues from last season that were evident in round one, and back at Mount Smart Stadium, they somehow need to fill the fan base with enthusiasm for what they're doing. And to be honest, that starts with the team that Andrew Webster names. Because I'm not going to be enthusiastic for Jackson Ford, and it's the other good thing for the Warriors, just thinking about it, is that the New South Wales Cup team is good. That there are players in every positional bracket at New South Wales Cup level who will be pushing for NRL footy. They want to play NRL footy. Most of them have played NRL footy before. So if they're trucking along well, and if they're playing better rugby league than the NRL team, at least that should bring the best out of everyone. But I don't necessarily see how Andrew Webster can change his team selections after one game, even though most of us didn't like it. So it's, as you may be able to tell, it's a very messy, just thought process for this game, which I might just call round one. Let's just pretend like round zero didn't happen. This is round one versus the Sea Eagles at Mount Smart Stadium Friday night. New South Wales Cup is happening before that as well. 5:15 at Mount Smart Stadium. Jersey Flegg then plays Saturday at midday in Pukekohe. And I think the SG Ball team is over in Australia. So if you want to catch the Jersey Flegg Warriors, they're playing at Pukekohe on 12 o'clock on Saturday. Tough loss for the Dragons to start the season. How'd you feel?
Well, that was an ordeal of a game because I did the in and out trip to Auckland on Saturday night to go watch Chris Stapleton at Spark Arena. Good stuff. But then that meant I got back at like 2:30 in the morning, and I'd like well, I jammed an extra large coffee in order to stay awake for the drive, but I spilt it, so I had to get another one. So I actually drank like one and a half extra large. So I wasn't sleeping when I got home. So I watched the replay of the Dragons. Sat there, a little bit of fast forward, skipping the bits, but um, I did watch that at like 2:30 till 3:30 in the morning, kind of time frame. And I actually thought they did all right. They had a little bit of they fell behind against a better team, but they had a bit of a comeback at the end. Christian Tupiloto with a hat trick, even though I didn't realize you got hat trick, like it counted as a hat trick if one's a penalty try, but apparently it does because they said he had a hat trick, and I'm taking that. Um, yeah, I don't know. I think they were okay. And okay is all right for when people have said that your team's going to finish dead last leading into the season. I think they actually went a little bit above average for that one.
Well, funnily enough, I was listening to the Triple M Sunday show. They were getting their predictions for the Wooden Spooners, and James Graham and James Hooper of Australian Rugby League expert extraordinaire fame, they both predicted the Warriors to win the Wooden Spoon. And James Hooper, expert journalist, he said he's not hearing great things out of the Warriors and that Roger Tuivasa-Sheck should play number 6.
Well, he's gone even further than the Rogers should be fullback thing, isn't he? It's a whole other step to that one.
But yeah, I mean, there's some Aussies who think that the Warriors are the worst team in the NRL. So it's just an interesting dynamic to ponder. And that is the niche cast for this week. We'll be back on Thursday doing our bonus podcast, discussing whatever we need to discuss on that day. Otherwise, big up yourself. Love yourself. Kia kaha. Stay beautiful. Church.